How much damage did Spotify do to podcasting? This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by Kolide. Kolide ensures only secure devices can access your cloud apps. It's zero trust, tailor-made for Okta. Book a demo today at kolide.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, it's Tuesday night. It's 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That means this is MacVoices Live. We're live on YouTube at youtube.com/MacVoicesTV. We have a number of our friends in the chat room. We have at least one or two panelists that are going to be arriving a little bit late. So right now it's just David and me doing our thing. David, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Yeah, it's a light crowd tonight, but that's okay. We can have some good conversation. Always good stuff to talk about. It's never a dull moment in the Apple world, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's true. And of course, here on MacVoices Live, we talk not just about Apple. We do it
our technology.
Yeah, we do it through an Apple lens, no question about that. But
yeah,
and that's one of the things I want to start out with, is I had a little story from last week that I thought was worth sharing just because it highlights one more reason that I'm an Apple customer. I came into possession of an M1 MacBook. There's one more person joining us. I came into possession of an M1 MacBook that had been abused battery-wise. Was in great shape. I think the thing had just been either left completely unplugged for a long time, or it had been left completely plugged in for a long time because it would not charge more than 1%. Plug it in, it ran just fine, but as soon as you disconnected the cable, it was gone. So I called Apple, and obviously it was maybe not obviously, but it was out of warranty. And so I asked them for a quote on getting the battery, and they gave it to me. It's like, okay, fine. They said I could take it to an authorized repair center. Well, I've got a couple around me, but they're really, to be honest with you, just not convenient. There's nothing less than about 45 minutes away one way.
Right.
So I said, do I have any mail-in options? And they said, sure. You can send it in. We'll send you a box. That'll cost you $20. So now keep in mind, this is Tuesday afternoon. So Wednesday morning, I said, fine, gave them did the Apple Pay thing. And so Wednesday morning, when I opened my front door, the box was sitting there waiting for my MacBook. So I packed it up, took it over lunchtime Eastern time, of course, to a local FedEx store and handed it over. And I started getting emails about, okay, your MacBook has been logged in. It's on its way. It got to Houston sometime the next morning. So that's now Thursday morning. Okay, Thursday morning, they're working on it. Thursday midday, give or take, it's repaired and it's on its way back to me. So I'm getting, the emails, the texts, constant updates. Friday morning at 10 o'clock, my MacBook was back in my hands with a brand new battery, and everything has worked just perfectly. So that's Tuesday from when I first made the call, Tuesday afternoon to Friday. They shipped me a box. The laptop went to Houston, came back, fixed. That's the kind of service that Apple delivers. And this is not the first time I've had that kind of experience. Now, I understand that the battery is a relatively easy replacement, especially since we knew exactly what was wrong with it. But still, just to get that kind of service is just unbelievable. And could I have taken it to one of the Apple stores or service centers? Sure. But that would have, maybe I could have waited. But if not, that would have been, 4 trips out and back. But even 2 trips, between gas and time, it just made perfect sense. So if you haven't experienced Apple support, I hope you don't, unless you want to do an upgrade or have something like that with a battery. But it was just an absolute pleasure to have it done that way. The young lady who helped me was phenomenal. I mean, everything was good. So, and I should say, by the way, it was all done by chat. There was no voice.
Right.
It was all chat. So
what they're doing these days. I had the same experience, but I mean, it goes back a ways. But I mean, I literally spilled water on my MacBook Pro years ago, and I was like, "Oh, this is great." It was going to be something of a problem. So, long story short, they replaced basically everything inside. Didn't charge me. It was covered under warranty. So, you always hear those good experiences with Apple support.
Yeah.
Imagine
so, Mark, sorry.
Oh, hello. Welcome, everyone. I was just listening to your story, and I was just thinking how much different the world would be today if Hunter Biden had sent his notebook to Apple instead of so it could be returned to him instead of abandoning it and inflicting all of our lives with all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. So I want to welcome Mark Fuccio, who apparently has. I'm not sure what. I assume it's a Super Bowl picture, Mark. I don't know.
No, this is a Carnival picture, because
that's right. It's Fat
Carnival,
Tuesday,
and tomorrow's Ash Wednesday. So Carnival's been going on in Brazil since last Friday, and they announced the winner of their samba contest. You might be forgiven for thinking it's a Super Bowl picture because they have what they call a sambodromo, which is sort of samba stadium in Portuguese, and it functions basically once a year. They use it for all the different samba groups in Rio and environs to come in and compete. And I was there back in. My wife and I were there in 1995, or maybe it was 96. So it's quite a spectacle. It's everyone goes crazy about what goes on in Mardi Gras in New Orleans, but in terms of the scale, it's just a completely different scale. To go to Rio or any of the other major cities. So.
Why is HAL now 9,000 there?
Oh, because we might be talking about AI, and I couldn't decide which one I wanted, but I figured, okay, well, we could conflate the two, and maybe I think it was one of your submitted stories, Jim. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and Jim Ray is here, also still out there floating around in space somewhere. Jim, good to have you as always.
Hey guys, hello, small gang. Where is everyone?
I think there's one more that may join us in a little while, but everybody else, it was one of those things where all the stars aligned against us, and so they had other commitments or other things to do. So it's just this happy little band. So I'm expecting great things out of this happy little band.
Okay, we'll stay focused and on point.
Yeah, what are my chances? Yeah, Mark, I wanted just to tell that story because I think it's really important. You hear so many bad things, and I realize that we're all biased, but when it comes to getting Apple support, they don't know any of us from Adam. It's just that's the kind of support that customers get. So if you have a need to send things in, don't be too concerned about it.
Yeah, I agree. I've had issues, and I've had things fixed, and I've purchased replacement earbuds, for a missing one, through Apple, and everything goes very quick, very smooth.
Yeah. So a couple things here. Some of this has been floating around for a little while. It keeps getting pushed back. Some are a little more current, but there's an article out from semaphore.com on how Spotify's podcast bet went wrong and the effect it's had on the podcast market. And I sort of crossed this up with another article I saw that, once again, podcasting is declining, podcasting is dying or dead. This seems to happen every couple of years, where something burns bright, then it crashes and burns, and yet there are plenty of podcasts out there that just keep on going. And I was kind of anxious to see what you all thought about podcasts? How important are they to you? And I'll ask the chat room as well. How important are they to you as a medium of education, entertainment, information?
Well, I think, as far as things becoming hot and going cold and all that, like, these are just media click, my first instinct, and usually my second, third, and fourth instinct is this is just clickbait and it's baloney. I think I read that article. I was kind of disappointed in it because I felt like I didn't really feel very enlightened after I had read it. But, Spotify tried to corner the podcast market and it didn't work. And yay. I'm very, very happy about that. I think podcasts are doing great. It's just that Spotify's attempt to take over and monetize, become a toll keeper, didn't work. And neither has anyone else's so far. So I think that's great. I think podcasting is, just going up. But, nobody's making a killing off of it, which is okay as far as I'm concerned. So it kind of fits in with Mastodon. It's not owned by any entity. It's very it's part of a hopeful trend, I think, of more community driven rather than corporate driven.
Wow, Jim, that's a connection I hadn't made, but that's not a bad one. That's not a bad one. David, you were going to say...
You let me on here for some reason. I'm always puzzled, but...
If anything that Spotify did is it put other podcasting platforms on their toes. Apple, for instance, the Podcasts app. I've never been a huge fan of the Podcasts app. I never was really great how... I was not too excited about how Apple curates podcasts in a lot of ways, but now they've got the paid type services. They've got they're curating it better, like they've been with music, and so if anything, I think not necessarily just Apple, but any of the podcast platforms are kind of learning and seeing that it's a way to make things better in the sense that there's tons of podcasts out there, lots of things to listen to, and you only have so many hours in a day to listen to it as well. So, I, and myself being a podcaster, I talk about topics like we talk about here every week, and I can't expect everybody's going to be one to listen to it, but we're going to get a fair amount of people listening, and I don't think podcasts are going to go anywhere anytime soon. The mainstream media sees its value. You're seeing more and more of these big mainstream media folks that are coming up with podcasts. I mean, look at Conan O'Brien. He did it, and then now SiriusXM bought it. So, so now he's on a much bigger platform. Even that's a good case in point with SiriusXM. Bought Stitcher. They brought that platform into their portfolio and trying to expand, thinking kind of along the same lines of what Spotify did when they get Joe Rogan and pay for all these big time people. But I think SiriusXM's probably doing a little better job with it. Just the way they're curating it compared to what Spotify did. Spotify just missed the mark.
I'm not sure if Conan O'Brien is a good example of starting from a small platform.
Well, he right after he had left he decided to leave TBS and stopped his show. I mean, he was.
But I mean, he was on national television for decades.
Oh, yeah. So sure. But all he did was he did a podcast. Conan O'Brien Wants a Friend, and great. Yes, you're right. I mean, people who know him very well and were listening. I mean, even during the pandemic days, there were a lot more people listening to podcasts, so it's kind of trailed off a little bit. But I think that just I think if anything, it got him that deal only because he did it, because he just was doing it to see what would happen, and that's generally how it goes. least in my observation.
This edition of MacVoices is supported by Kolide at kolide.com/MacVoices. Our sponsor, Kolide, has some big news. If you're an Okta user, they can get your entire fleet to 100% compliance. How? If a device isn't compliant, the user can't log into your cloud apps until they fix the problem. It's that simple. Kolide patches one of the major holes in zero trust architecture, device compliance. Without Kolide, IT struggles to solve basic problems like keeping everyone's OS and browser up to date. Unsecure devices are logging into your company's apps because there's nothing there to stop them. Kolide is the only device trust solution that enforces compliance as part of authentication, and it's built to work seamlessly with Okta. The moment Kolide's agent detects a problem, it alerts the user and gives them instructions to fix it. If they don't fix the problem within a set time, they're blocked. Kolide's method means fewer support tickets, less frustration, and most importantly, 100% fleet compliance. Visit kolide.com/MacVoices to learn more or book a demo. That's Kolide, KOLIDE.com/MacVoices, kolide.com/MacVoices. Thanks to Kolide for their support of MacVoices. I want to welcome Web Bixby to the panel, who is definitely had a touch of class tonight. Web, good to see you.
It was executive committee meeting today, so can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sound good.
Yeah, executive committee meeting today, so I had to dress up. Battle armor. So.
Understood. Been there, done that. Yep.
Is that made of steel or Teflon? What is your best material?
Oh, Teflon. Absolutely Teflon. Nothing sticks. So,
yeah.
So hey, you're asking about podcasts, and one podcast got me here. Keep in mind how I got here was just kind of a fan, and I guess I made a couple of funny comments here or there and got me on the show. So I listen to them a lot. I listen to several podcasts every night, and I probably have about 20 that I listen to throughout the week. So they've been very important to me. Anything from Mac-related stuff to business-related stuff to sports stuff to did you hear that the Chiefs won the Super Bowl? I wasn't sure if you heard that or not.
I heard,
so,
yeah. I did, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Just wondering. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's it.
Podcast about that?
I guess I put this article in just because one of the points they made was that some of these smaller podcast studios are suffering a little bit because of some of this, what they claim is a downturn, or what Spotify did. And I think that's right there, that's an interesting statement, that there are these studios out there that are creating podcasts just to create podcasts. And I know a couple of them, some of them produce some pretty darn good content, but some of them just seem that's their reason for being, almost like a movie studio.
Well, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead, Mark, because I know I have a view on that, and it's not necessarily bad, it's just a view, but please go right ahead.
Yeah, no, I think the article was very much one of these sort of revelatory Schadenfreude, take pleasure in other people's problems sort of article, outlining, basically to me it was, Spotify made a big bet, it didn't work, okay, next, so it didn't need to me as many hundreds of words as it was, except it provides all the detail around it. And some of those places, I don't know if I've ever heard their names, their shows, but I know their names, like Gimlet and some of the others. It's sort of the one studio I may be familiar with is called Wondery, because they have a number of history and sort of business related and other topical shows. And I think it was ultimately acquired by Amazon. So it's out there, and it's for some of the things, like they have a thing I think called Business Wars, where they talk about how did Kentucky Fried Chicken get going, or how did how did Toyota go from nothing and to world-class leader, and how did it battle Honda as it was growing? So these things are episodic and sort of season-based, and some shows are rigid, they have maybe 4 seasons, and others it's a variable amount, maybe from 6 to 8 or 10. So those are sort of, maybe interesting around a broad set of themes. But I think the problem many shows might have is after a season or two, what do you do for new ideas? And I think at that point, if they can't renew it and refresh it, you basically burned out your audience. So I'm not surprised there's a high degree of failure. Again, relative to Spotify, I think their approach was seeming, from my point of view, so different than what made podcasting work, where you had small little groups of people, and and a host where he or she or they would have interest around a particular set of subjects, and it would grow and it would attract people and it would expand from that. It seemed they wanted to go very much the sort of Hollywood model of, we have a great idea, we have great funding, we have great talent, and boom, it's going to be a success. But it wasn't, so I think maybe they just misunderstood intrinsically what makes the podcasting phenomena work. Plus also the fact that it's Spotify, so it's behind their paywall or their intrusive sign up process, and I think that right away just limited a lot of their available market. So I'd say, okay, I salute them. They tried, they failed, so let's just hope it makes the rest of the podcast ecosystem smarter and wiser and more vibrant.
Mark, I kind of agree with you on the Spotify thing. I think one of their mistakes, and I too am a listener to a number of the Wondery podcasts, the business oriented ones. And the interesting thing in Amazon is this: I guess Wondery did it, but also Amazon. I think they've continued it. Where if you're an Amazon customer or if you are a Wondery subscriber, you can you can binge, the entire series, whatever that series happens to be. Otherwise, they just, like so many podcasts, dole them out, one every week, give or take. And so, I like that idea. I think that's where maybe it went wrong, that they just tried to lock things down behind a paywall, a la some of the streaming TV services.
Mm-hmm.
And podcasting is not, there were in the earlier days, there were so many people just kind of doing their own thing and figuring out, they bragging about you don't have to follow the old rules and the old models. And then slowly but surely, that came around that there were good reasons for following some of those models, as opposed to just, doing it the way we're in the middle of a podcast. The doorbell rings. Okay, I'll be right back. And people get up and go and just leave the show, then come back and say, oh, yeah, well, that was my Amazon package being delivered. That just seems completely unprofessional to me. But so many people loved it because it was authentic. Then it seemed to turn into sort of a waste of time. And, well, I'm not going to bother with that. So I want to get the chat room in here. Barry says, podcasts are what I listen to exclusively while commuting, doing dishes, cooking, and doing housework. The ecosphere seems bigger and brighter than ever. N2 Tech says, podcasts, this was interesting. Podcasts don't have a lifespan, but subscribers do. I was a diehard Twitch watcher, but I changed my viewing habits.
Oh, I think, Twit, is he saying?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Leo Laporte?
Yes. That's Leo's. And that, I think that's an interesting point because, there are a number of podcasts out there that have been around for a while. If they're still delivering on something you enjoy, great. And if they're not, well, then move on. And I'd like to think that the MacVoices folks they're stuck with us for so long, get something out of it, enjoy what we do. But I recognize that there are only so many slots. What'd you say, Webb? You have about 20?
Yeah, 20 of various. I was just kind of looking at them. So I use Overcast as my pod. So and so I got now probably a dozen different categories. That doesn't mean I listen to every single one. But it's all kinds of stuff, anything from local stuff to the Twitch shows I do listen to. Of course, this one, I've been listening to David's show here in the last couple of 4 weeks, I guess. So it's just, I don't sit here and study them and take notes on them. It's kind of passive in the background type stuff. But yeah, I enjoy them. Yeah. And it's a way to just get different information in different ways. So
yeah, I'd say probably I have similar amount, probably 24. Yeah, they some post weekly, some post monthly, others, they post maybe once every 3 months or twice every 3 months. So they have different frequencies. Others, some of the longer ones, seem to be posting every 4 or 5 days. So it's a good mixture of things. It always keeps things interesting. And I have enough sort of availability time between driving and and exercise and walking and playing with knives, also known as cooking, where it's great to listen to them in the background. So, but again, I think I sample things, and some shows I go to, and there's some where it sounds like a really great topic, but the audio quality stinks, and that's your primary product. It's not the content; it's the quality of the audio is the primary product. And I've reached out to some people on that, and they've upped their game, and others don't. So
yeah, I've been there,
and they'll just die.
I've been there. I mean, I think Chuck's been there too. I struggled for when I first started my show, and got some comments about it, but I worked through it, got the equipment I needed, make sure I sound good, and the show is edited properly, and it's a clean show. And you're right, because people listen. There's been shows I listen to, I was like, oh my God, I can't listen to this anymore. I mean, it's just horrible production, but people are anybody can do a podcast, and they want to do it to learn and to understand. But then, when they hear comments, they're constructive criticism, but they can do better and improve. And that's what happened to me. I improved, and now my show sounds, I think, much better audio wise and production wise.
So, David, there was a comment in that article that it was near the end that sort of rubbed me the wrong way. And that I think it sort of reveals that certainly misunderstanding on the part of the author, and I'll share the comment in a moment, and also on the part of maybe Spotify if they bought into it. The comment was that there are people that podcasters were looking for a way they could make a living, sitting in their shorts, recording from their bedrooms, and. Some of that, I think that, a lot of the podcasters I know that they have a passion, and, for them, it's a sort of virtuous circle. Oh, I can do this. I can talk about things I'm interested in, and, I can make some money through selecting appropriate advertisements, and we'll just table that topic. What's not to like about this? But very few I know do it as a full-time, source of income. Right. Leo is obviously different because he started with such a huge audience, and then he was able to diversify with different shows and different hosts. But
he also started with a TV show, although it was on cable.
Yes,
and it was on radio. But look at, for example, David Sparks.
Yeah.
Has totally made a career out of it. He quit being a lawyer just to do podcasting. So, and to me, this technologically it's very different, but from the content and production, I think this relates to YouTubers, which is another thing where people basically small time produced content that's not out of. It used to be that content was gatekeepered, and because it was so expensive, both audio and video, so you couldn't see any content that or even written, because people couldn't typeset, so this is where the internet has really fulfilled, I think, a lot of its promise of democratization, and perhaps social media is also sort of, at a far end of that, allowing, anybody to, publish 280 characters. But, there are a lot of people making a living on YouTube now. Now, that's gatekeepered through YouTube. So that is corporate. you know, YouTube makes money and YouTube can shut you down. But, you know, there's a lot of people that, you know, and it's partly that, oh, there's this, you know, basically free thing that you can put your content up, which, you know, video used to be extremely difficult because it's so, you know, intensive in terms of bandwidth and storage. And then also the means of production, you know, now you could make a great show on an iPhone. And so, you know, there's a bunch of podcasts I follow, but there's also a bunch of YouTubers that I follow. And I tend to mostly, definitely on podcasting, I don't listen to anything that is professionally, you know, I mean, I guess you could call David Sparks professional because he makes money at it, but you know what I mean? Like the studio model kind of, you know, production. It's all, you know, like you say, passion projects. And that's why, you know, I think I'm happy about this Spotify, you know, I mean, I think Spotify thought, oh, we can move in, elbow aside all of these passion projects and, you know, hoover up all the revenue in this category. And that didn't work. And I don't think anybody's doing, you know, like, so Apple looked at that and like, oh yeah, we better do that. Well, I've never even heard of a, you know, like the Apple, you know, paid podcasts, you can only use their app. Does anybody here actually use Apple's podcast app? I haven't used it in years. I use Overcast. So yeah, I can't possibly hear. Okay. Well, I can't possibly hear any of the paid content because I don't use that app. And I have not even heard any buzz of like, oh, you got to hear this show that you can only hear on Apple's podcast app. Does anybody here like, oh yeah, this is a great show and you can't listen to it on Overcast? So that's sort of my, you know, if you can't listen to it on Overcast, I probably don't want to unless somebody just comes out with something super, super compelling. And I haven't seen anything like that.
Am I wrong? I didn't think Apple had anything where you could actually, well, I guess it does, come to think of it. Yeah, you can have paid content.
Yeah,
they added that about a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, they made this big announcement, and then I haven't heard a thing since then.
I think it's more that the listeners have the option. I know several podcasts that do that, where just like, you know, we have a PayPal link, you know, they have an Apple link. There's certain requirements for, you know, what you're doing with your content if you're going through the Apple thing. And
well, no, there's shows you can only listen to on Apple's podcast app, and you have to pay. So it's not like, oh, you can go don't, you know, and it's not like, you know, what you're doing with stuff, you give people a special link, but it's done, you know, so Apple gets a 30% cut and it's all, you know, it's all very smooth, and it's not like, oh, you know, we have to generate special links and all that kind of stuff. This is more like iTunes Store kind of a, you know, kind of a thing. But I don't think it's really gone anywhere.
Next time on MacVoices, the debate over how much damage Spotify did to podcasting rages. We consider why it seems to be that commercial projects versus passion projects are the norm in this medium. Then we start a deep discussion about a Bing meltdown. That's next time on MacVoices. We'll see you then. As always, I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.